Welcome to the speaker series on a shot glass of recovery.
Yeah. You get a house, you get a car, then you start thinking that's all you are, but you don't know the truth. So let me spell it out for you. Now I got your attention, now there's a start. Now sit and listen to my favorite part. Life's been giving us some clues. The answer lies inside of you.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and welcome back to a shot glass of recovery. Before we dive into today's episode, a quick reminder to support the show by liking, subscribing, and following us on iTunes, Spotify, and Podbean. You can also support us by leaving a review. It helps us to reach more listeners on their recovery journey. If you'd like to keep the show going, another way to support us is by considering to make a contribution through our PayPal link at paypal.me/a shot glass of recovery. Every dollar makes a difference, and we appreciate your support. On today's show, we're thrilled to feature another incredible speaker from the online home group AA Solution Seekers. This community offers live speakers every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, sharing experience, strength, and hope. Until you can join them live, here's a taste of the wisdom and inspiration they bring to the table.
Hi, everybody. My name's Lisa. And yes, as Shannon said, I am an alcoholic. I also like to say that I'm a grateful alcoholic because nothing solidifies change more than me saying I'm a grateful alcoholic. Because when I first came in here, our secretary referenced it. I was a hateful alcoholic. So that was my main emotion when I came in, was hate and anger and rage. And Shannon, what time am I supposed to finish? 10:02? 5? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And I love the way that Shannon qualified tonight as well, because I could relate to that. The disease of more. And it was one of the things that I would struggle most with throughout my life, was that I felt that if I had this or if I had that, then maybe I would be okay. And to me, that sums up the disease of more. I get certain things, or I get to a certain place in my life, whether it's with a partner, a position at work, a certain place in my career, and I think that finally I'm going to be okay. And then, for the little while, it's okay. And then there starts to be cracks in the veneer. The sheen wears on the shiny thing, and it's no longer quite shiny. This would become quite apparent to me in relationships. I would always go after the person who I thought everybody else wanted, because then if I got that person, what a prize that was. And then when I got them, suddenly my diseased thinking would say, something must be wrong with them. They settled for you, so something must be wrong with them. And if I got them, then they went from unattainable to attainable. So see how the shine would wear off. That highlights the craziness of my alcoholic thinking. I forgot to start with this, and I should start with this to save all of you. Hey God, it's me, Lisa. I'm speaking tonight at the Mount Royal group. A little more of you and a lot less me to help save all of them from all of me. Thank you. I'm an alcoholic, not just in body, but in mind. And if you're new to the program, it talks about this specifically in our literature. Don't be like me and come to a meeting and never pick up a book, or get a book and toss it in the back of your car so that it gets soaked in mud over the winter and never crack a page. You do not get well this way. This is a program of action. Recovery takes work. It is one thing to go to meetings. I am not a person who believes that meeting makers make it. I believe that people who go to meetings can still be sick if they're not living in the solution. So I needed to learn how to live in the solution, but it would take me a while before I figured that out. So I'll tell you a little bit about my experience, which is all the things that led me to the point of walking into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So what I used to be like, what happened to get me here, what happened while I've been here so far, and hopefully how I'm different today. Hopefully you will see some change in the behaviors that I used to exhibit to what I exhibit today. So I come from a pretty large family. Like around our dinner table, there was 7 people. I think by today's standards, that's pretty large. I was the last of 5 children. So I was the baby. I was the youngest. My next up, older brother would say that made me the accident. And perhaps there could be some truth to that, because there was an 8-year separation between he and I. And then an 11-year separation between me and my sister, and the distance grows further up the tree. So I think my parents were tired by the time they had me, and they were very, very busy. My mom had been a stay-at-home mom up until about the time that I went to kindergarten, and then she decided to go back to work because there wasn't a house full of kids at that time anymore. And the things I'm going to talk about didn't make me an alcoholic. I believe that no matter what, once I started drinking, I would have discovered that I'm an alcoholic. Because as I referenced, I have the allergy. I have that disease part in my body that when I pick up a drink and put it in me, something happens. Something is triggered inside of me that doesn't happen in the average, normal, as they say in the big book, temperate drinker. The teetotaler, I like to call them, because I just like saying that word, teetotaler. Those are my sisters. They're teetotalers, born in the same family, a lot of similar growing up experiences under the same roof. They're not alcoholics, and I am. There's a check mark too. Another example of what makes me an alcoholic, I think, is this disease of my perception. That's one of those things. I'm gonna stack a lot of resentments as I go through life. One is, why me? And that applies to just about anything, right? Why me? Why not you? Why me? Why did I become an alcoholic? Why did my siblings not become alcoholics? So there's one building block of the disease of my thinking. I had some trauma at a young age. And because of this trauma, I was seeking a way out. I was seeking a solution. And I was looking for a solution to pain and suffering. I was seeking a way out of, and I didn't know this was insane thinking. I didn't know that even the first 4 years I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. When they talked about the insanity of our mind, I thought, well, that must be unfortunate for all of you people in this room. It certainly doesn't apply to me. I'm not crazy. And isn't that what every crazy person says? I'm not crazy. So the disease of my thinking is always what separates me from me and my fellows. So these traumatic events were the things that I was trying to escape from. And when I hit 16, I found what I thought was a great solution. It was legal. Well, not quite for me yet, but because I was underage. But it was legal for the rest of society. Once in Ontario, at least, when you hit 19, you could drink. And that definitely took away some of my pain temporarily. It took me out of myself. So at 3 years of age, there was a bad accident in my family home. We used to, like I said, my mom had 5 kids, very busy woman. We used to have these wash tubs. They were made of concrete next to the washer and dryer in the basement. And to get the water warm, she would run the tap in the right-hand one, and someone called her attention away while I was sitting in the left-hand one, naked and cold. And so I pulled the tap on a swivel over onto my body, and all she heard was this terrible scream, and she came back to find me frozen in place under this flow of hot water. And when she lifted me up, not all of me came out of the tub. And so they had to rush me, they had to airlift me to a brand new burn unit. These are things now I look back on and say, wow, what a miracle. They said that I would not have lived if that burn unit had not existed in the city of London. We lived in Woodstock. And so they rushed me to that hospital. I would be isolated and separated from my family for many months. And so I came from this big family, all kinds of attention, to I was in a bubble. and no one could be allowed in the same room with me because of fear of contamination. Another miracle, I recovered from that. They told my parents there would be decades of skin grafts. Guess how many skin grafts I had? 0. 0. I still get chills when I talk about those things. I was young. I guess my skin, I don't know. I have no explanation for it. They also told my parents that they should prepare, that I most likely was not coming home, and that they should prepare the rest of the family. But here I am. The reason I mention that story is because it talks about how being around others and that feeling of love and connection was very important to me, right from a very young age. And I think being deprived of that made me thirst for it even more. And I bounced back. I'm a happy child. I'm very outgoing. I'm very trusting. And I was visiting a neighbor that used to live across the street from us, and she had moved a few blocks away, and her husband had passed. And she asked my parents, can Lisa come stay over for a sleepover? She was like a grandmother to me. And they didn't know if they should. They argued back and forth, and then they finally said, okay, we'll let her go. And I got bored after the overnight, and the next morning I woke up bright and early and went out to the neighborhood and explore. And unfortunately, what we didn't know is that there was a neighborhood pedophile who lived in the area. And he took me and absconded with me into his home. And when my mom came to pick me up later that evening, the lady didn't know where I was, and she didn't think to call anybody. And so my mom went knocking door to door and eventually would find me. So I lost my innocence very quickly, and unspeakable things took place in the time that I was there. And that broke me. And this was the first time I lied. Now, I lied to protect myself, and I lied to protect my mom. Because when my mom showed up at that door, practically kicking it in, she was full of rage and fear. And what this sick human being had told me was that what had happened to me was my fault. And that if I told anyone, that they wouldn't love me anymore. And when my mom was at the door and she was angry, I was flooded with fear, instant fear. This has just happened, and now my mommy's not going to love me anymore. So when he thrust me out the door and said some things to her, and she said some things to him, we got to the car, and she grabbed my little hand tightly and dragged me back to the car, and I got in the car, and I bit my tongue so hard I could taste metal. You know, I could taste blood in my mouth because I just didn't want her to see me cry. And when she said, did that man do anything to you? I lied. And I looked out the window and I said, no, Mommy. And off we drove, and we drove home. Now, they wouldn't find out the truth for several months because I started to have night terrors. And then one night when my mom was out, my dad started to ask me some questions about what I dreamed about. And then he said, did that really happen to you? And I said, yes. A terrible experience for my parents back in the 70s. You know, they didn't know what to do. They did tell me later that they went to the police, and the police said, it's too late. You know, we can try, but she's 5. So that was a traumatic experience. And it was also traumatic for my parents. And I think it broke them a little bit too. Also, what my parents didn't know is a year later, my older brother, Adam, would take an interest in me that older brothers shouldn't take in little sisters. And so I was starting to get a message that even though we went to church, even though we went to Sunday school, and I would hear the song, God sees the little sparrow fall, in my little head and heart, I cried, God, where are you? Why not me? Why don't you see me? And I wasn't really down for church for much longer after that. I went, I didn't like it. You know, one of the things I really didn't like was they made me wear a skirt and really itchy leggings. And, you know, I grew up to not like any of those things. So that was kind of torture as well. That was like punishment, right? Have you ever worn leggings, sir? It really is punishing. Hot and itchy leggings. I'm glad we laugh. You know, I think it's good to laugh. One of the things that I love most about coming to Alcoholics Anonymous is I could sit in these rooms and I could hear you share your stories of pain and suffering and trauma from your past, and then tell a joke. And I'm like, oh my God, I want what these people have. I'm miserable. Yeah, so I've definitely found freedom in Alcoholics Anonymous from more than just the drink. For me, I had a soul sickness, you know. I was not seeking God after that. I, I left the church in my teens when as soon as I didn't have to go, I stopped going. Um, and yet I was still struggling. It was in high school too that I discovered that I was different from most of the teenage girls. They all had something I wanted, but I didn't have what they wanted. They were all boy crazy, and I was not. So we were different, and I had grown up in a religious household that was very against. At that time, they were talking about having ministers who were gay be allowed to be ministers in the church, and my parents were on the side of hell no. And so I heard that, and I heard these things at the dinner table. So it did not feel safe for me to talk about who I was, for me to seek guidance, seek help. I remember at 16, I phoned the kids' helpline to talk about being gay. And the poor little counselor, who I'm sure was a volunteer, tried to convince me I wasn't. So, I never called there again. But yeah, so here I am seeking some support and some guidance. And the guidance was, oh, I'm sure you're not. Like, oh, wow, this really is a bad thing. Thanks again, God. Uh, so what did I do? I drank. I picked up alcohol. And I remember not liking it. It was an awful price to pay for oblivion. It burned. It didn't really taste good. I'm like, why can't they make this taste like chocolate? And then they did. Like, there were things down the road that would taste like, chocolate and be all sweet going down, and really bad coming back up. And there's again the insanity of my drinking is that I keep drinking things that make me sick. And I was sick. I got terribly ill every time I drank. Multiple times a year, I would end up in the hospital. And what I didn't know back then was it was alcohol poisoning. I drank so much one night that I lost my vision. My eyes were open, but I could not see anything. And so through talking about these things in Alcoholics Anonymous, I've learned, oh, that's what blackout drinking is. I thought that happened to everyone. You drink and you don't remember things, and you have to play catch up the next day by asking people what happened to you, where did you go, why am I here, who are you? But apparently that doesn't happen to the average temperate drinker, but it would definitely happen to me. So I continued on. So drinking was my solution. It gave me courage when I had none. It made me feel like I was important to other people, because when I drank, I didn't care about you. I didn't care of your opinion of me, which was opposite of what I was feeling. Because when I wasn't drinking, I only cared about what you thought of me. I look back to, and I remember hurting my parents, because when I would come back from college to visit, basically I'd come home to get good meals and do my laundry, and that was your purpose. And then I went to catch up with my friends, because I didn't care about my parents. I didn't care about my family or their feelings. I just wanted to catch up with my friends. So this is where I would start to see the self-centered, self-seeking nature of this disease as well, not caring about other people. I'm always seeking. And what am I seeking? I'm seeking to fill a hole and an emptiness inside of me. And I tried really hard to fill it up with booze, and that didn't work. It would give me I love that commercial, Red Bull gives you wings. For me, it was tequila. Tequila gave me wings. And then I hit the sun and got lit on fire and crashed and burned. It was terrible. But this insanity of the disease is none of that mattered, I think it's in my yearbook. My slogan was, I'm never drinking again. I'm pretty sure that's in print somewhere. So if you ever get the Streetsville Tiger yearbook, you can probably look that up to check the veracity of that statement. It was not a good solution. It worked for a while, and then it didn't. And then it turned on me. And I didn't know how to stop. I got into radio, and I had a pretty good radio career for 17 years. But again, nothing was ever good enough. Nothing was ever enough for me. I didn't have enough success. I wasn't making enough money. The list goes on and on. My last couple of years were here in Toronto, but the longest stretch I had was doing a morning show in Moncton, New Brunswick. I did 10 years at a show there, and I had a lot of fun. It was great, but my drinking really took off there. I got paid in alcohol. If I went and did a live remote, and they wanted it to be extra spicy, they made sure there was something on the table that wasn't water for Lisa. And the more I talked about businesses in the community that served me liquor, the better my bar tab got. So I learned how to play that game, and my relationship just went down the toilet. I wasn't showing up for other people, and again, it's that disease of my thinking. I'm thinking it's all her fault. She doesn't love me enough. She's cold and icy, so I'll go somewhere else where it's warm and hot. And I don't mean sunny Florida. I'm looking for always a solution outside of where I'm at, and then blaming the very people that I'm hurting. That's my MO as well. I often hear people talk about taking hostages too. And I think too, a lot of the people that I were with were victims of Lisa. And I've made my amends. I've worked through the steps. And I'm so grateful to this program, and I'm grateful for the steps. So it was through losing that relationship. And interestingly enough, I lost that relationship here in the city of Toronto after I had quit my career and moved here to be with that partner because her career was taking off. She was studying psychology, probably to better understand me, at U of T. And so I left everything to come here to support her. Wait, that's the alcoholic Lisa talking. I left everything behind because I was afraid of losing her. I was afraid if I didn't follow quite quickly, she would find something better. There it is. That's the truth. I love uncovering the motive behind the things I say. There's another great speaker that I've heard. He always says, first thought wrong. Right? So that first thought that came out of my mouth, wait a second, that's not the truth. The truth is I came here because of fear. Pretty much everything I ever did was out of fear, worry, or because I was trying to get something that was going to make me feel better, make me feel different. So I really didn't know who I was for the longest time. I feel like I'm starting to know who I am today, and I'm starting to like me, which is a change. I've done a lot of work in recovery, in the steps. The first couple of times, like I said, got the book, looked a little bit, didn't really do a lot of it, got to the God Park. I was like, this isn't for me. I'll go to meetings and set up chairs. And then my relationship ended and I drank over it. And I was like, screw you, AA. I didn't get my things back. And I blamed AA. Can you imagine? Talk about crazy thinking. Nothing but help was offered to me in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Nothing but time and patience. Oh my God, my sponsors, so patient. May they rest in peace. Not all of them are dead, but for a while there I thought, man, I must be the Black Widow. I'm down too. I'm just glad I'm not killing people anymore. I've gotten nothing but love and kindness. And then what did I do to AA? I went out and drank, and then I badmouthed AA. Right? Wow, that's a good classic member. And you guys let me back. So if you think there's something that you've done that will keep you out of this club, let me tell you, there is nothing you can do that will keep you out of this club. They really do keep coming back. They welcome you with open arms, no matter what you've done. And I'm so grateful for that. The sponsor I have today is the sponsor I got after my sponsor's husband was dying of cancer. She couldn't sponsor people at that time. She was going through a lot. And his name was Andy, and he had heard part of my fifth step because I was like, I can't tell her this. She's going to hate me. So I said, can I tell it to Andy? So I told it to Andy, and then Andy got a brain tumor. And, my alcoholic thinking is like, did I do that? Oh my God, it's so bad. I gave him brain cancer. And Andy would pass away 3 months later. And so I had a temporary sponsor. And I was phoning it in, and then Andy died, and again, the God thing came up, and I got another resentment. All those things I thought, you did to me, and now you're doing it to the people I love. I'm done. And Andy had said one thing to me on his deathbed, and it was, don't drink, I'll haunt you. And I kind of was scared that could be possible So I didn't drink. I went out and did some outside issues for about a year, almost killed myself, and then was just broken enough. That's the gift of grace for me. I did to myself what nobody on the planet would want to do or wish on another person, and I came close enough to death that finally I had a sense of willingness and honesty. And when that happened, I called my old temporary sponsor and I said, "Would you please sponsor me again?" And like a good AA, he lovingly said, "What's going to be different this time?" And I said, "Everything. Everything." He goes, "You going to do what I suggest?" And I said, "Yes." And we started again. And that was January 1st, 2014. So I am clean and sober, and I celebrated 11 years this last January. Thank you. And I'm so grateful to everyone who's ever taken time to sponsor me. If you sponsor people and they never say thank you to you, I say thank you. Call me up and I will say thank you. You don't even have to tell me what you just say. "I'm a sponsor. Thank you." I'm so appreciative because you give of yourself. And I know why we give. It's kind of selfish. We say this is a selfless program, but it's kind of selfish because I give it away to keep it, right? Well, that sounds kind of selfish to me. There's still something in it for me. That's the payoff. But I have to give it away. And that means time and listening. And sometimes we're working with people who don't get it at first. I remember what that's like. And when I get frustrated with those repeat offenders, as I like to call them, suddenly a little voice inside the back of my head goes, "Remember when?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, God, I get it." And then I love to tell my sponsor, those difficulties because he gets to laugh at me. It's kind of like, when you're a terrible child and your mom says, "I hope you get 10 just like you." And then you do. So that's what that's like. I'm running out of time here. Let me see. What can I close with? Like I said, I'm really grateful for sponsorship. I'm grateful for the 12 steps. I didn't just work the 12 steps once. I didn't work them at all at first. And then eventually, honesty, willingness, brokenness, surrender, I worked them. I followed directions. It's nice when people say there are suggestions and you don't have to take them, and you don't. You also don't have to put a parachute on when your plane is about to crash. You don't have to wear a life jacket on a vessel that's sinking. So I look at these as very important directions, and I take them today. And it's not up to my sponsor to make me do anything. My sponsor doesn't have that power over me. But I get to do things today that I didn't want to do, 20 years ago. I came into this program 20 years ago. And it took me that long to start to do the things that were suggested. And today, I can say that I'm a completely different person. I carried around a lot of hate. I love to joke about how we all have people that live in our heads rent free. The one that lives in my head is a serial killer by the name of Dexter. You may have seen him. He has his own TV show. And he lives in my head. And everybody who ever wronged me had a tarp room. There was a roll of plastic going out, and I was taping up the walls, and I had your pictures of everything you'd ever done. And that's what I would do if I could get away with it. That's why I asked God to save you from me and my crazy thinking, because it's there. But that's what this program and the 12 steps have given me, a way to quiet the crazy, a way to pause and say, first thought wrong. What's the next right thing? And do I want to be a prisoner anymore? I was a prisoner of my own creation. And the walls of that prison were revenge, hatred, self-pity, all of those things. I was very angry for the things that had been done for me. And years ago, a family secret had been revealed, and my brother Adam was forced by my dad to apologize to me, and he called me up, and he was extremely angry. There was no apology coming forward, and I said, "Something terrible must have happened to you in order for you to do what you did to me, and for that, I'm sorry. And I forgive you for what you did to me, even if you can't own up to it. I forgive you." We're not friends. We don't call each other every weekend. There's no big reconciliation. We kind of avoid each other at family events, but that's okay. For me, that's self-preservation. I don't need to put myself in harm's way with someone who is still so angry because of what they did to me when I was little. So that's self-preservation. But what I had to do was I had to offer forgiveness. I used to hate the Lord's Prayer, and if you did the Lord's Prayer at your meeting, I didn't choose you as a home group. Today, I still don't know it off by heart. There's some sort of block in there. But there are parts that I remember and parts that stick out that I make use of today, because the big book told me to do that. Make use of what religious people have to offer. Give us this day our daily bread. I ask God for that today. What's that daily bread? It's this spiritual way of living. You know, a little more God, a little less me today. Thank you, God. That's my daily bread. That's how I get fed. I go to meetings. That's how I get fed. I help other people. That's how I get fed. And the other part that always will stick out to me is forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. And suddenly I was reminded in that moment, how can I ever expect other people to forgive me if I am unwilling to forgive those that wronged me? And the man who abducted me, I wrote him a letter, and I was able to let that go, let that hate go. Again, I said the sick man's prayer a lot. And years of therapy couldn't wipe away that pain, that self-pity, and that hatred. But the 12 steps, the 12 traditions, and being able to share my experience with all of you has done that for me. And today, I am free. And I'm joyous. And I'm a happy, grateful alcoholic. Thank you very much for listening to my story.
Everything you do, the answer lies inside you.